Oh, you know what time it is? We're here. College basketball betting show, 7 o'clock edition here. There's already hoops going on. I am pulling my guest away from the first four matchups. I'm your host, Mike Randle, Chief Content Officer here at FTN Network. And we have in with me the man, the one you all want to hear, the Yoda here at FTN for college basketball, the great Mike Cutri, who has been phenomenal. Mike Cutri, thank you so much for joining, man. Last year, now we're working together. I mean, this is unbelievable.
This is awesome, Mike. Thanks so much for having me on. Super excited to talk some hoops with a fellow New Jerseyan.
Yes, fellow New Jerseyan for sure. And listen, Mike's been off all week. We've been going back and forth. Don't forget, like, subscribe. We have our 3 free day trial here at FTN Bets. You can sign on, get it for 3 days. I mean, is there a better 3 days that you would want to come on here to FTN Bets than right now? You can get the content, of course, all across the board. But listen, without further ado, what we're going to do here tonight, folks, is I am going to guide Mike. I'm going to go game by game and get Mike's insight, of course, all the way across. He is going to pick a bracket for us here. This is unbelievable stuff here at FTN. Pick the bracket. He's going to give us, we'll go back and forth. We'll talk as well. And then tomorrow, make sure to tune in to Mean Streets. Mike will be on. Walt Waddell, of course. And then tomorrow in the afternoon, I will come on. I will pick every first round game for us here. But you certainly want to listen to Mike, because if you go to our FTN Bets page, I don't know another person that's up 120 units on college basketball this year. And you know Mike with his props up over 100 units as well. It's just been fantastic. And anywhere you want to slice it. So, Mike, let's get started here. We will open up with the South region. So we'll go with the South region here, which is Alabama, and we will go game by game. I'll put up the bracket here for South. And you can talk to me about the opening games. Let's start with Alabama here in that first round matchup, of course, probably have them going through.
Yeah, of course. It's a good place to start. Alabama is an absolute wagon right now. They went right through the SEC tournament, or SEC tournament champs. Nate Oates is a great coach. They have a ton of athletes. Brandon Miller, candidate for a Wooden Award this year. I don't think they'll have a problem with the playing game winner here. But I do want to mention right now that looking at contests on ESPN's Bracket Challenge, that majority of people do have Alabama going all the way and winning to the national championship. So if you are looking for some leverage in your brackets, maybe an Alabama fade could put you in a good leverage spot. Just putting that out there right now, but we're just talking through first round matchups. So of course I'm going to have Alabama go through to the next round.
Excellent. It's a great point. Of course, we want to know what is going on because you want leverage. It's a constant strategy we use here at FTN's, particularly in our daily product. Next round, 8-9, Maryland, West Virginia. I am a little torn on this game. I'm dying to hear what you have to say here.
Yeah, this is a little bit of a fun one. So just starting with Maryland. Maryland has been one of the more inconsistent teams, especially away from home this year. And their offense is kind of a one-trick pony. It's run primarily through Charlotte transfer Jameer Young at point guard. They got some big wings on the wing that can out-physical smaller teams. And recently they've been playing a lot through Julian Reese in the post, which has kind of give their offense a little bit of a bump. But are they going to be able to do that against this really physical Bob Huggins West Virginia team? I don't really think so. They haven't really seen an uber aggressive pass denial defense in the Big Ten this year. It's going to be something pretty brand new to them. Kedrian Johnson on West Virginia is an absolute ball hawk, so I think he can give Jameer Young some problems. And Westphal is pretty big on the wing, so I don't think Hakeem Hart or Dr. Scott is going to give them any bit of a problem. So I'm going to take my boy Eric Stevenson to hit some threes late and take Westphal to move on to the second round.
Yeah, support that move. I think that they've cut their teeth here, Mike. I remember they were 0-6 in the Big 12, but have improved as the year's gone on. They played well at Iowa State. They've had some big games. I don't think Maryland's going to be able to bully them, and I just don't trust Maryland on the road. I have an issue with Kevin Willard as well. That's a personal bias, but I just don't trust them on the road here, so I like that one. Yeah. Same as you're very good. I like it.
I've seen enough of Seton Hall games live to know where you're coming from.
Got it. Totally got it. So great. So you have that there. Let's move on. San Diego State versus Charleston. The old 5-12. What do you got, Mike?
Yeah, the old 5-12, and I know a lot of people are going to be leaning towards the Charleston route here, and their record is really impressive. I think it's 31-3 or somewhere around there. And actually, I did write this game up on FTN Bets small little plug here. So if you want some more detail on this matchup, head over to FTN Bets and check out my breakdown. But just high level here, I don't think this is a really good matchup for Charleston. San Diego State is just a super, super tough team. What Charleston wants to do is they play super fast. They're the 29th fastest team in the country. They play a ton of guys. They have a 9-10 man rotation where they kind of sub in hockey shifts. So they really like to wear their opponents down throughout the game. They take a ton of threes. They pound the offensive glass. Can they do that against this really tough, stout San Diego State defense? I don't think so. San Diego State is going to control the pace. They play at the 252nd slowest tempo in the country per KenPom, so I think they can dictate the pace, eliminate that transition attack from Charleston. They have a ton of athletes. They also have a deep bench. They do not get out rebounded, and they are really, really good at defending the three. They have the 7th best defensive three-point field goal percentage rating, which I think can really stymie this Charleston attack. And I have San Diego State covering and moving on to the next round.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Look, when I look at teams that can have upsets, and we'll get to some a little bit later, I don't see it here. San Diego State's 2-point interior defense has been a little suspect from past years, but they lock down around the arc. I don't see it happening. Charleston has to hit some threes. And you saw, Mike, in the conference tournament, they weren't exactly dominating. They really struggled a little bit. I feel like they're headed in the wrong direction as opposed to some other small schools that are hot, of course. I agree with you there. Next one up, number 4, Virginia versus number 13, Furman. Mike, talk about a popular upset here that people are getting into. Where do you go?
Yeah, so I think this one's actually a possibility, right? So everybody knows what Virginia is all about. They have that super slow pace. They run the pack line, Tony Bennett's pack line defense. They have a slow, methodical mover blocker, off-ball movement offense. They're a little susceptible now because one of their better players, Ben Vanderplas, is injured, so he's not going to be playing in the tournament. But Virginia, to their credit, has been shooting the ball a lot better this year than they did last year with a very similar team. I think Furman can actually keep this game close. I'm not sure if they can pull it out. Per synergy, Furman has torched pick and roll in isolation, but they defend the ball pretty decently. They have really good spacing. Mike Bothwell and JP Peggs can shoot over the pack line defense. Jalen Slauson is an absolute matchup nightmare. He just really needs to stay out of foul trouble. The only thing with Furman is that they can really get bullied in slides. Slauson is their biggest player at 6'7". He's more of a point forward, but I don't know if Virginia can really take advantage of that. Maybe Jaden Gardner can have a big game down low. But, Furman has all the tools to get hot and hit some threes and make this a really close game. I really like their guard play. Virginia has been susceptible to the upset in the past. We've seen 2 years ago against a very similar Ohio team that moves the ball really well, can shoot over the top, take Virginia and beat them outright. So I think this is going to come down to the wire. For fun right now, I have Furman moving on. I still need to look into it a little more because I don't know if Furman can really, for 40 minutes keep up with that, really tight offense that Tony Bennett runs with, and Virginia has a ton of veteran guards. Mm-hmm. But I think this is going to be a close enough game where Furman can pull up the upset.
Yeah, I'm not sure where I'm going either. Full disclosure. I need another night to think about it because I trust Tony. It's a tough one. I trust Tony Bennett in these spots, but I also saw a terrible North Carolina team just light Virginia up from 3. And listen, we saw Furman in their conference tournament. When they're hitting, they can get up big, but they can give that lead right back again. I don't like Vanderplas not being there. They have to be able to turn the corner. I'm with you. It's a very tough one. I could see myself. I'll put you down for Furman here, but definitely I think that we need a little more analysis because it could go either way, but it certainly is a very, very popular matchup right now for sure. Let's head to the bottom part of the bracket. Creighton, NC State. What do you got here, Mike? Creighton, NC State. I'm not seeing a lot of NC State. You give them a chance?
They absolutely have a chance here, and I'm a little bummed about NC State because I am a huge Rutgers guy, and they're one of the teams that got over Rutgers. Oh, yeah. But I don't want to spend too much time complaining about that. But, the one thing you look for in March is guard play, and NC State absolutely has terrific guards in Terquavion Smith and Jarkel Joyner running the show. Creighton plays a really deep drop coverage against ball screens, so Kalkbrenner is going to be sitting there surveying the paint and allowing a lot of guards to get into the lane and make some plays. And I think Terquavion Smith and Jarkel Joyner are fully capable of making good decisions in the lane. Sometimes they make some bad decisions, but they're talented enough to punish the drop coverage. But the problem for NC State here, I think, is on the other side of the ball, is where they look to pressure and make ball handlers really uncomfortable with their aggressive defense. And Creighton has one of the more poised backcourts in the entire country behind Ryan Nebhart and Trey Alexander. Both of them can run point. They punished hyper-aggressive defenses all year. You look at their matchups against St. John's, they beat them pretty handily both times they played them this year. I think because of NC State's lack of rim protection, I think Creighton can get to the rim and get much more easy buckets than NC State can on their offensive side of the ball. Another thing that could be going NC State's way is that Creighton doesn't really double the post, and Ryan Kalkbrenner is a great secondary defender, but he isn't that great as a primary defender. And if he's left alone on an island against big DJ Burns, I think DJ Burns could have some success there. So I do have a slight lean for Creighton here. I think 5.5 points is a little too much for me, but I have a play on the over 147.5 because I think both offenses can get a lot of easy buckets in this one.
So according to you, we'll put Creighton through. Is that correct?
That's right, Mike.
Yeah, I may have Creighton bias. I've come back to Creighton so many times this year, Mike, and they've disappointed me in certain spots. And then we subtract Kalkbrenner earlier this year. He was out. They lost 6 in a row, but he wasn't there for a while. I just think they can get going. I really do. I believe in their guards. And the NC State only having one quad one win, which was that blowout win over Duke, where they got up big. I don't buy their defense. I think Creighton is a little more balanced, but I agree with you. 5.5 is a lot. I'd like it better at 4. I really like it at 3.5. 5.5 is an awful lot, but yeah, Creighton going through can see that certainly as well. Right below that, Baylor, 10.5 point favorite over Cal Santa Barbara. Thoughts?
All right, so I have a shocker for you here, Mike. So we look at Baylor here, and I think everybody knows how impressive their guard play is with Adam Flagler, LJ Cryer, and the freshman Key George. But what sticks out to me a lot about this Baylor team is they are one of the more inconsistent teams in the country. If you look at their performances, they either have really high highs or really low lows. If you look at shot quality metrics, they are 271st in shot selection in the country, meaning that their guards, although they're really, really good shot makers, they do take some pretty tough contested shots, and they work a lot in isolation. When I'm looking for upsets in the tournament, a team that has high variance like that is a big red flag for me. And I think Baylor is one of those teams that could get upset depending on the matchup. Another thing that I've noticed a lot about Baylor is that they run Scott Drew's patent no middle defense, but it hasn't really been the same this year, especially at the rim. They've allowed a lot of dribble penetration, and they have not defended the rim well at all this year. They actually ranked 314th nationally in 2-point field goal percentage, which is not typical of a Baylor team. If you look at synergy, their defense is ranked 356th at the rim, which is pretty terrible. Now, if we look on the other side at UC Santa Barbara, UC Santa Barbara has a lot of high major talent, Mike. They have AJ Mitchell, who could be an NBA prospect if he develops his jump shot. They have Miles Norris, who came over from Oregon as a 6'10 swingman. And they have Andre Kelly that came over from Cal, who had some dominating performances last year for Cal. And they also have Josh Pierre-Louis, who came over from Temple, who is another high-level wing player. The problem with UC Santa Barbara is they can't shoot. But what they can do is they have big guards who can attack the rim. And what I mentioned before, Baylor has struggled against big guards that they can't keep out of the paint and who can attack the rim against their weak interior defense. And then on the other side of the ball, what UC Santa Barbara does really well is defend the three. Coach Pasternak really switches up their defense and runs shooters up the 3-point line. And what does Baylor want to do? They want to get the ball in the hands of Flagler and LJ Cryer and jack up threes. And Santa Barbara is really good at defending that. So if I'm going to have a 3-14 upset, to me, this is the spot to take it. So I have Santa Barbara moving on, and I have a play on the plus 10.5. Of course.
Yeah, amen. We're on the same side here, Mike. I completely agree.
I love it.
I've seen enough Baylor this year. You talked about their metrics. Look within the Big 12. They are last in 2-point offense and last in 2-point defense. And they are last at defending, last in effective field goal percentage allowed. I am with you. I think Baylor is going out. I also think if you want to take a stroll down narrative street, the best game they played this year was the Oak State game when George was not on the floor. I feel like Flagler and Cryer just are more confident in their roles and what they're supposed to do. George comes in, he's a superior talent, but it hasn't meshed all year. The defense hasn't been fixed. Santa Barbara can absolutely get to the rim. Yes, taking the points, and I'm taking Santa Barbara as well. I am not on Baylor. I'm not into a team that I've seen inconsistent. I mean, they blew big leads at home, Mike, to teams in conference. Totally with you there. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Baylor can get hot, shoot 50% from three, and go to the Final Four. But if they're not hitting shots, watch out. Yep. That's all I'm saying.
Yep. Absolutely. Totally agree. Let's move on here to the bottom of the bracket. Very curious. I have been on Missouri. I have been on Missouri. I have no dog in the fight. Maybe it's the Mountain West bias. Missouri, Utah State. Am I wrong here?
Listen, Mike, we've agreed a lot so far on this show so far.
Mike, we won't really get to Florida Atlantic because I have Florida Atlantic going much farther than anyone else. I can tell you that right now. Go ahead.
I'm on Missouri as well. So this game's gonna. I mean, it has a really high total. I think it opened at 159. But this game's gonna be up and down. A lot of points. And the thing about Missouri is that they have a super aggressive press and pressurized defense. And I don't know if the Utah State guards can handle that pressure. They have a elite ball movement. They shoot a ton of threes. But with the aggressive Missouri defense, they're going to force a lot of isolation spots for Utah State. And I don't know if the guards can really have an advantage in that type of situation. I think they're going to struggle against the pressure. They haven't really played, top teams this year. I think the only Power 5 team Utah State has played this year was Washington State. I think they're really going to get bothered by the pressure. And on the Missouri side, where they've gotten crushed all year is on the glass. And that's not something that Utah State can take advantage of. They really don't offensive rebound really well. They kind of punt offensive rebounds to get back in transition. And I don't think they can take advantage of the biggest Missouri weakness. So I like the Missouri perimeter to give Utah State some problems here and come out with the victory. I think Kobe Brown has a massive game.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a matchup they can't have. I think Utah State does not want any part of teams that can break you down off the dribble. I understand Missouri's defense. Dennis Gates, they've been playing well. They got hot at the end of the year. I think they get by here. Last one, Arizona, Princeton, of course, number 2 versus number 15. Who do you got?
I clearly have Arizona here. I mean, although seeing Ivy Leagues in the first round is never fun for anybody who plays against them. They're the most disciplined teams in the country, well coached. And Princeton does have a guy, Tosin Ebomwin, who is an absolute matchup nightmare. But, there's no one on the Princeton team that can stop Tubelis or Ballo inside. So I think Arizona rolls here.
Great. Okay, so now looking at your bracket, sir, I will fast forward so we can get to the other regions here. So we had Alabama, you had West Virginia, you had San Diego State. I believe we put Furman through, Creighton, Santa Barbara, Missouri, and Arizona. So, sir, who is going to be in the Elite 8 in the South bracket? Let's do it that way.
Okay, so I think West Virginia can give Bama a tough game because they can match their physicality, but Bama has too much firepower. So I have Bama over West Virginia. I think San Diego State has too much athleticism and too many bodies for Furman. So Furman's little run there comes to an end. So I have San Diego State moving on. I think Creighton can break down the Santa Barbara defense and protect the rim a lot better than Baylor can. So I have Creighton moving on. And I have Arizona over Missouri in another really high scoring game there.
Great. So, and so tell me, sir, who's in the Elite 8?
In the Elite 8, I would have Alabama over San Diego State and Arizona over Creighton.
Excellent. So we have in our bracket here, our first bracket, we end up having in the South region, you have an Elite 8 matchup between Alabama and Arizona. Mike Cutri, the floor is yours. Who is going to be in the Final Four?
All right. Well, we talked about leverage a little bit, and a lot of people have Alabama going. And to Alabama's credit to that thought process, they do have a pretty easy road to the Elite Eight here, I would say. But for me, looking at a potential matchup with Arizona here, Tommy Lloyd is a disciple of Mark Few. They run, pretty similar style offenses. And we saw a Gonzaga-Alabama matchup earlier in the year where Gonzaga absolutely worked them for 100 points. I think we see a similar type of game here where Alabama's fast pace is not the right thing to do against Arizona. And Arizona, with their big bodies down low, their really good front court, is able to take advantage and moves on to the Final Four.
Excellent. So we have Arizona.
So bear down, baby.
Bear down. Let's slide across here to the other side of the bracket. We'll go in clockwise tradition here, folks, going straight across. Let's head to the Midwest region here. Houston at the top. Houston, Northern Kentucky, Iowa, Auburn, Miami, Drake. We will go right down the line. Give me the first two games here because I assume you have Houston going forward. But if you don't, stop me. Houston, Northern Kentucky, Iowa, Auburn.
Yeah, of course. I have Houston here, and I've been pretty vocal all year that I think Houston is by a pretty large margin the best team in the country. But we could talk about that later, Mike. So I think they handled the Northern Kentucky zone really well. They crushed them on the glass. They move on pretty easily. The second matchup here, Iowa Auburn, is definitely a fun one, where Iowa's going to want to push the pace, make this an up and down game, spread you out. They move the ball well. They shoot a ton of threes. But I don't know if that's a really good idea against an Auburn team that has more of a backcourt that kind of strives in that chaotic up-tempo environment. Yep. Another thing to point out is that this is in Birmingham, which is 2 hours from Auburn campus. So this can also be more of a home game, kind of almost for Auburn here. But, the way to beat Auburn is to kind of pack in your defense and force them to shoot threes. Auburn cannot shoot a lick from three. They're 314th nationally in three-point field goal percentage. And they struggle against slower teams, but Iowa's not going to do that. Iowa's defense, if you look at them every year, their defense looks like Swiss cheese. And, forcing this Auburn team to an up-tempo style with Wendell Green and Katie Johnson who can get hot in a hurry, I think that's a bad idea. I don't know if Iowa has anybody who can, keep Janai Broome, I should say, off the glass or out of the post. So I think there's just too many things going here for Auburn in this matchup, and I have them moving on.
Excellent. So Auburn and Houston. Now let's get to some of the tougher ones. Miami and Drake. Boy, I really liked Miami. I had the mid-year, Mike. I sort of said, here we come. Miami, great coach. Omier is grabbing 4 offensive rebounds per game over the course of his career in college, guards, the whole thing, the experience. But now I don't know if he's going to play. Drake, Roman Penn is finally healthy entering the tournament, which he wasn't a couple of years ago. Where are you going here?
Yeah, when you say tough, you ain't kidding on this one, Mike. This one's a tough one.
Because Mike, the winner of this game could get hot. That's the thing.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think I would have Miami moving on pretty easily if Omier was playing, because I think he's a mismatch problem for this Drake team because Darnell Brody won't be able to handle him at all. Mm-hmm. But he's looking and trending to be out from what I've been reading, which is a huge bummer and makes this game super interesting because without him, I think Drake could match up with Miami here. I think Roman Penn can match up with Isaiah Wong and they can go back and forth at the point. Miami's offense, even without Omier, is still, the 12th best offense in the country. Yep. But I think they could struggle to defend to Drake defensively. Drake's a veteran team. They've been to the tournament before. Miami is not strong defensively against teams that can move the ball really well. Drake certainly can. They have a lot of versatile players. You look at Tucker Javaris that can step out and hit threes. And without Omier down there, we saw it against Duke. They got absolutely crushed on the offensive glass. And could Darnell Brody now have a huge game because Omier's out? Maybe, possibly. So I think this is going to be a really good close game. I think the line is actually pretty fair. What's it at? +2.5 for Drake, yes. I think.
Yep, 2.5. Yep.
And we've seen teams that have weaker defenses go down early in the tournament before. So maybe this is where Miami steps out. So right now, I actually have Drake moving on.
Yeah, I can see it. It's Omir. If Omir was playing and they were healthy, I would love this Miami team. I think, Mike, they would have got by Duke in that semifinal game if he didn't go out in the first round.
Absolutely.
They could have won the ACC tournament. We have a totally different look at Miami, but it is a Jenga puzzle. It's very sensitive. I agree. Next one there in the bottom, number 4, Indiana, number 13, Kent State. Little popularity here with the Golden Flashes. Do you agree?
I am on the train for the Golden Flashes. Mike, this is my favorite upset of the whole entire tournament. Kent State is an absolutely great team to watch, super well coached, has great guard play. They are the perfect team on paper to upset not just Indiana, but any team that you look for in March, right? So if we look at Indiana, everybody knows their offense runs through All-American Trace Jackson-Davis, or more recently, freshman Jalen Hood-Schifino has been taking the reins of point guard since Xavier Johnson has been injured for the season, and he's been a high usage guard for them as well. But outside of those two, their role players are very inconsistent, to say the least. On the Kent State side, you have Sincere Carey, who is one of the best point guards in the country you never heard of before. They are elite on defense. They trap the post, so I don't think TJD is going to have any sort of cakewalk in this one. And they also have a top 20 defense at the rim, which is what you need to do to stop Indiana. Sincere Carey and Malik Jacobs are both ball hawks defensively, and one of them is going to get the Hood-Schifino assignment and make life living hell for 40 minutes. The only knock on Kent State is they aren't the greatest three-point shooting team, and Indiana has been known all year to overhelp and give up a lot of threes. We just saw it in that Penn State matchup. But they are capable shooters. They just hit 10 threes against Toledo in the MAC championship, so I don't think that's a huge knock on them. But for me in this matchup, I think give me Sincere Carey. I think he's the best guard on the floor. I think they do enough defensively to neutralize Jackson Davis. I've kind of been on the fade train for Indiana all year, and I think this is the perfect culmination of that thought process. So I have Kent State moving on.
Yep, 12 versus 13 in this region. I agree with Sincere Carey. Jalen Hood-Schifino, great job at Purdue. Fantastic. Not sure he can do that every single night. He's going to have to do it here. Carey will be all over him. We know Xavier Johnson's out. They don't have a lot of options there. I've seen Race Thompson miss a ton of free throws. And yes, Mike, it cost me a cover recently. So there is some recency bias there.
I've been there.
Trace Jackson-Davis and Race Thompson can miss it. Not sure about Mike Woodson on the offensive end. Defense, they're going to play hard. But Kent State, Houston, played tough there. Gonzaga on the road, played tough there. Charleston lost by 2. Battle tested, will be fired up. Absolutely be ready for this matchup from the start. No problem. Let's continue on here. So we had the top there. We have Houston. We have Auburn. We have Drake. We have Kent State. Couple upsets. Let's go to the bottom part of the bracket. Give me your play-in winner tonight, Mississippi State Pitt, and then give me them against Iowa State.
I think Pitt comes out of this. Well, honestly, Mike, the playing game, both Pitt and Mississippi State, I think are super weak playing game candidates here. So I do have Pitt moving on because I think they can hit enough threes against that super compact Mississippi State. And I do think they have enough bodies on defense to at least contain Toulouse-Smith a little bit. So I have Pitt moving on, but either one of those teams that move on, I don't think they stand a chance against that aggressive Iowa State denial-heavy defense. TJ Altabergo has just done an outstanding job with that team with limited talent, just bringing in as many transfers as he can to fill the roster, and then they just perform at a high level for him. So whoever goes through, I have Iowa State moving on there.
Excellent. Going down to the bottom there, next game right below it, Xavier favored by 11 over Kennesaw State, who took care of Liberty in the A-Sun. What a job by Coach Abdul Rahim.
Oh, and he is an outstanding coach, Mike. But, I've been a little vocal about Xavier being a candidate for an early round exit. And, Kennesaw State could possibly pull it off here. They have a great point guard in Terrell Burden. They run kind of a 4-out scheme against their around their big Damon Robinson inside, and they shoot the ball extremely well. They shoot 37% from 3. We know Xavier all year has pretty much struggled against good offenses all season this year. They struggled against, DePaul. They struggled against even, some of the worst offenses in the Big East this year. And teams, like I said before, that struggle defensively are early round exit candidates, but I just can't get there with Kennesaw State here. I think Xavier has too much versatility. Jack Nungy is going to be able to take Robinson out to the three-point line, move him around. I think he has a big game here. Sully Boom and Colby Jones are just too versatile and can do too many things on offense. And I think Xavier just outscores Kennesaw State here and moves on to the second round.
Yeah, I also am going to look at that Sule Boom prop because he was scalding hot, then really struggled, Mike, against Marquette. He has not had 2 bad games in a row, especially when Fremantle's went down. So that's something that I'm also looking at as well.
I really do like that.
Thank you. That makes me feel great. Boy, this one is dividing the household here. My wife is really on Penn State. She has these feelings, these vibes. And Mike, you don't mess with your wife when they have feelings. Number 7, Texas A&M, 2.5. Number 10, Penn State. What do you got?
Yeah, she's a fan of booty ball then, I guess, huh?
Yeah, right, exactly. Loves Pickett. Yeah.
So, yeah, I actually think she is on the right side here. I'm on Penn State as well. Okay. The reason is because of Texas A&M's defensive scheme is that they like to under ball screens or ice ball screens, and they're really aggressive in their gap help, which allows a lot of reversals, three-pointers, or over-the-top three-pointers, which we know Jalen Pickett is one of the best in the country in drawing more than one defender and finding open shooters. And Penn State is one of the best three-point shooting teams in the country. They're 9th nationally in three-point field goal percentage. So I think Pickett and Penn State, Shrewsbury can draw up a nice game plan against this over-aggressive Texas A&M help and kind of plays into the way that Penn State wants to play and, jack up a lot of threes, but they're really good three-point shooters. I think they can take advantage of that. And the one issue that Penn State really does have is that they are a little tiny inside, and they do give up a decent amount of rebounds on the glass, but they've dealt with that all year in the Big Ten, and they've been able to survive. So I don't think the size of Texas A&M is going to be anything that they haven't seen before.
Nope. They battle with Edie. They certainly have. And now last game in this region, Texas minus 13.5. Colgate, who's advancing here? Colgate's starting to get some love today. I saw on social media for the upset here. You buying it?
I mean, what's there not to love about this Colgate team? They play pretty fast. They shoot a lot of threes. They got some really smart and great ball players. Tucker Richardson is one of my favorite players in the country. He is a triple-double machine recently. But, it just really sucks that they get matched up against this super long, athletic Texas team that I just don't think they can compete with for a full 40 minutes. They would have to play the absolute perfect game to pull up this upset. And that's just not realistic that they'll be able to compete with all of the bodies that Texas has, who also have been playing really, really well lately. We saw them just take down Kansas in the Big 12 championship. So I have Texas moving on there.
Great. There's your first round. So, Mike, take us through and get us to an Elite Eight here. Who's going to be in the Elite Eight in the Midwest?
All right. So in the Elite Eight, I have Houston over Houston over Auburn. And then I have Kent State over Drake.
Okay.
And then Houston moving on to the Elite Eight from there. And then I have Xavier over Iowa State because I think they have enough guard play to be able to handle the defensive pressure of Iowa State. Mm-hmm. And I have Texas over Penn State. And then I have Texas over Xavier. And I have Houston beating Texas to move on to the Final Four.
Wow. So that is an all-Texas showdown there in your Midwest Elite Eight. We have Houston versus Texas, and moving on to the finals will be, you said your Houston Cougars. Is that correct?
That is absolutely right. They'll be going home for the Final Four.
Oh, my gosh. I mean, that would be unreal. Just crazy, crazy stuff. All right, moving around here. Mike is just flying through, folks. So please like, subscribe, hit us up. Free trial FTN bets. Don't forget about it. Moving down here to the West region. Let's take a look here at the West in the lower bottom part of your bracket. We have Kansas, of course, as the 1 seed. I had a problem with them being seeded third. There's no way you can put them third here after what I saw, especially with Houston losing because they didn't have Sasser. I get it, but they did lose in their conference tournament. So if you're going to hold that against Kansas, you got to hold it against Houston. However, Kansas in the West, Howard, Arkansas, Illinois, St. Mary's, VCU, UConn, Ireland, which I think is a great game for us around here. TCU versus the winner of Arizona State, Nevada, Gonzaga, Grand Canyon, Northwestern, Boise State, UCLA, Asheville. Start at the top, Mike. Go with those first two games for me. Kansas, Howard, Arkansas, Illinois.
All right, so we don't have to spend too much time on the first matchup because I think Kansas easily moves on to the second round. I mean, Howard does have some size for a small major program, but they like to press a lot, and pressing Dwan Harris is probably not a good idea. I think Kansas handles them pretty easily. Moving on to the Arkansas-Illinois matchup. This one's a fun one. We have a lot of 8-9 fun ones this year. Yep. And honestly, I am a huge fan of this Arkansas team. I think they are much more valuable than their seed, or they're much better than what their seed shows. And I think the main reason is because I think they have collectively the best individual defenders in the country. And that does not bode well for Illinois because they're going to force Illinois into a ton of isolation. And I don't think that Matt Mayer or Terrence Shannon will have much success against the individual defensive prowess of these Arkansas guards of Anthony Black, Devo Davis. Jordan Walsh has been playing a lot for Arkansas as well. Arkansas is really good in transition, where Illinois is really susceptible in transition. And what Illinois does on defense is which everybody in the Big Ten does, is they play that drop coverage. So I think Nick Smith and Anthony Black can have a lot of success in the mid-range and make a ton of plays against this Illinois defense. So I have Arkansas moving on to the second round strictly behind their individual defense. And I think they kind of shut down Matt Mayer and Terrence Shannon there. Oh, Mike, I think you're on mute.
Mike. Got it. Yep. Sorry. Yep. I think these are the key games coming up here. So we got those first two, and I love Arkansas. The key is, can they make shots? And if they can make shots, they're going to be fine. But let's head down here to these next two games because I think they are critical. First one up here, St. Mary's, VCU. 5-12 is going to draw attention. What do you got?
Yeah, another 5-12 one here. And I've seen a lot of people on the VCU train, and I absolutely love VCU as a program, as a team this year. I'm even wearing the VCU jersey right now.
Havoc.
Yep. Havoc lives here. But at the same time, what does VCU want to do to be successful? They want to force turnovers. They want to get out in transition, and they want to attack the offensive glass. Can they do that against St. Mary's? Well, St. Mary's doesn't turn it over. They're 60th nationally in offensive turnover percentage. They do not allow anything in transition. They're in the 8th percentile per synergy in transition defense. And they are an outstanding defensive rebounding team, the second best defensive rebounding team in the country. So everything that VCU wants to do, I don't think they can have success against this super, super disciplined, well-coached St. Mary's team. I know a lot of people just saw St. Mary's get absolutely smoked by Gonzaga in the WCC finals. I think it's an overreaction. I think they just had a bad game. The analytics love St. Mary's. I have them against the spread, and I also have them moving on to the second round here. I think Logan Johnson against Ace Baldwin is going to be a fantastic matchup, but I think St. Mary's just has much more discipline than this VCU team. I think they move on pretty easily.
Yeah, agree with you across the board. This is not the 5-12 matchup that I have. It's not. I don't see the upset here. It's a bad matchup. St. Mary's is a team that's not getting enough credit. Recency bias is strong. All of that. Completely agree. Aiden Mahaney can get a bucket late if he has to as well. We saw that there against Gonzaga. Next one here, UConn Iona. Rick Pitino may not be there for long. He has to find how to get to St. John's, Mike. That was a bizarre answer. They asked him if he's going to go to St. John's. His response, well, I don't know how to get there. That is not answering the question, Rick. You can divert as much as possible. Who do you got here with the Huskies and the Gales?
Yeah, this is kind of awesome by the committee that they matched these two up. And for me, this is actually Danny Hurley's most talented team he's had there at UConn so far. They've been a little inconsistent this year, but they have so much size everywhere at the guard position specifically. And I just don't think that Iona can handle that size for 40 minutes. A couple of things Iona does have going for them is I think Rick Pitino could outcoach Danny Hurley in this one. Iona does force a ton of turnovers, 44th nationally in turnover percentage, where UConn is 234th nationally in turnover percentage offense. And we've seen them cough the ball up a lot. But I think Iona just gets absolutely crushed on the offensive glass. I think Tristan Newton and Andre Jackson can give the pick and roll attack of Jenkins and Clayton a lot of issues defensively. And I just don't think this is the matchup for Iona. And I think UConn pulls away late. So I have them with the spread, and I have UConn moving on as well.
Excellent, of course. And let's go down to the bottom here, looking at the West. Let's take a look, see. I have some games there as well. We have ASU, Nevada. So give me that quick rundown, and then against TCU as well.
Yeah, so I mentioned this before, and I actually put this on Twitter. I think that the playing game 4 teams are all pretty weak. And then maybe that's just me being a Rutgers fan. I don't know, Mike.
I'm with you. They should have been in. They should have been, absolutely. I agree.
But, I think I have Arizona State moving on against Nevada. But, I don't think either of them have the firepower to keep up with TCU. I mean, Mike Miles is an absolute killer for the Horned Frogs. But at the same time, I'm just going to mention this now. Watching the last few TCU games, they have a little bit going on with Eddie Lampkin leaving the program. And, especially in their last game against Texas, they seem to have a little bit of bad body language and a little bit all over the place. I don't know if there's something going on with that program, but coming into the Big 12 tournament, I was really, really high on this TCU team. I think they have excellent guard play. They defend pretty tough. They rebound the ball well. Love Mike Miles, but he really hasn't been the same since his injury. Mm-hmm. This Eddie Lampkin news, I think, has something going on in the locker room here at TCU. They haven't really looked the same. So I'm a little down on TCU, but I do think they get past either Arizona State or Nevada here.
Yeah, the Lampkin thing is a big deal. There are some injuries we can ignore, others we can't. I'll always remember when Oregon went to the Elite Eight in Kansas City, which, by the way, is not in Kansas, unlike what they said on the selection show. And they were playing Frank Mason's Kansas team without Chris Boucher, who got hurt the game prior. And Oregon still won that game. So, but this one, I think there's some legs with this. Lampkin not being there. I agree with the body language. It's a big deal. Plus, Mike, you want to throw in the fact, I know it's Narrative Street, but one of the play-in game winners always wins a game. In fact, usually they win more than one. If we don't like the other one, then it could be this one here. Absolutely.
It's possible.
It's possible. Please help me with this next game. Gonzaga, Grand Canyon. I have not liked Grand Canyon. I have done poorly betting Grand Canyon, but Mike, they are scalding hot from 3. I mean, last 3 games, 60%, 50%, 40%. Gonzaga weak in the backcourt. They do have Timmy. Where are we going here?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to lose games when you shoot 45 for 93 in the tournament. It's really tough. Bryce Drew is an incredible coach. Yep. And he's done a great job there at Grand Canyon. They have a guard in Ray Harrison, who is an absolute baller.
Presbyterian, from Presbyterian. Yep.
Absolute great player. The problem with Grand Canyon is they don't really have any interior presence. They don't really score at the rim, where Gonzaga is a little susceptible with Timmy there anchoring the defense. They're not a great defensive, rim protecting team, I should say, Gonzaga. I just don't see Grand Canyon shooting 70. They would need to shoot 70 or 80% to keep up with this Gonzaga offense. And Timmy should absolutely work them. If they decide to double, I think it could be a really big Strother or Anton Watson game. The Zags are playing much better down the stretch here. They look like the team that we all thought they were coming into the year. And then they stumbled a little bit in non-conference, and everybody, started sounding the alarms, which I think was a big overreaction. I'm a huge Gonzaga fan here. I think their young backcourt has really grown and improved throughout the season, and I think they move on actually pretty easily here.
Well, I'll tell you this: they were robbed of a national title because if Kennedy Meeks was correctly called out of bounds, 100%, they could have won it. Mark Few, legendary coach, stayed at Gonzaga. Love that as well.
I lost so much money on that game, Mike.
Yeah, I know. It's really frustrating. Similar to me with Texas Tech against Virginia. That was on social media the other day, that ending. I forgot how great that ending was. For anyone who doesn't
one of the best national titles of all time, hands down.
And for anyone who doesn't want to remember that DeAndre Hunter did not play in the UMBC game. Take a look at what DeAndre Hunter did in the championship last 2 minutes against Texas Tech. He's a difference maker. He was a difference maker. Great win by UMBC, but let's keep in mind, that was something to always think about as well. Bottom 2 games here. Let's take a look. West Region finish off this first round. Northwestern, Boise, Mike, UCLA, UNC, Asheville.
Yeah, so we have an interesting one here in Northwestern Boise State. Boise State has not had good success in the tournament recently. They've gotten knocked out pretty much every time they've had a game here, and I think that trend continues here, which I'm not excited about because I've watched Northwestern a ton this year, and I really wanted to fade them in the tournament. But they go up against this Boise State team who plays really deep drop coverage defensively, plays really slow. And what has Northwestern seen all year in the Big Ten as they've seen drop coverage? So Boo Buie and company will be super familiar with that scheme defensively. Boo Buie has had a lot of success in the Big Ten going up against that drop coverage. I think Chase Audige also has a bounce back game here against that drop coverage defense. Boise State also on offense likes to run a lot of their offense through the post. And we know Northwestern this year has turned on the post trap flag and it's been really successful for Chris Collins. They are really good at defending the paint. I think that just spells trouble for Boise State. We're going to have a really, really low scoring grind here, but I'll take the Northwestern guards and Boo Buie over Marcus Shaver here. So I have Northwestern moving on.
Great. And the last game, I'll let you go first because I have an interesting take. UCLA, UNC, Ash?
Yeah, so the story here with UCLA, and everybody knows, is they're missing their best defender and I guess their third option on offense in Jalen Clark, which to me is a massive loss, especially defensively for this UCLA team. And I had them as going before the injury, I had them as my second best team in the country behind Houston. And it's just really, really unfortunate here. But at the same time, it is a significant loss. But the health of their center, Adembona, looks pretty encouraging that he could potentially play at some point this weekend, if not the first game. I don't think they really need him here against UNC Asheville. UCLA has the best 1-2 punch combo in the entire country with Tiger Campbell and Jaime Jaquez. So I don't think they have too much trouble here against UNC Asheville. What they really should be concerned about is trying to contain the 6'11 unicorn on Asheville's side, Drew Pember, who's an absolute stud. But I'm assuming Jaquez is going to have that assignment, who's a pretty good, damn good defender. And I think McCronin will probably have a pretty good game plan against them. Asheville is pretty aggressive in their ball screen, so I think Tiger Campbell can have a lot of success eating that up. The only thing with UNC Asheville is that they could get pretty hot from three, if you want to go that kind of narrative, where they're 6th nationally in three-point field goal percentage. So if they get pretty hot from three, UCLA is a little shorthanded. I can see a world where they keep it close, but I really don't see UCLA losing this one.
All right, my friend. Before we get to the rest of your bracket, let me build an argument here and tell me if I'm crazy. Now, listen.
Okay.
Maybe
this is great. I want to hear it.
Okay, so maybe this is Giddy Potts, Middle Tennessee versus Michigan State, which, by the way, as 2 minutes into that game, I text all my friends. I go, you got to get to TV. There's a problem. It had that vibe, Mike. You know, that vibe of like something's going to happen.
Oh, I remember. Yep. I remember.
And I did predict Abilene Christian over Texas as well. Here's my thought. If you wanted an upset early on and you had to go through sort of the schematic of an upset that could happen that no one thinks can happen, here's the following. We got a key injury on UCLA. We have Bona coming back, but we'll see how he's going to be, how effective he can be. You have a small school that no one really talks about in the Big South. That small school was great during the regular season. They won their conference tournament. They shoot the three really well. They defend the three really well, and they have a player in Drew Pember who's a very unique matchup across the board. I'm just saying, could you see a path? Because I'm really close to picking this just because all of those little check marks line up to upsets of the past that have made no sense. I love Tiger Campbell. Jaquez is great. I get it, but they aren't at full strength. you could see UNC Asheville getting hot. And this is not a small school that backed into the tournament. They were hot at the end of the year, and they won their conference tournament. Tell me I'm crazy, please.
Listen, Mike, they don't call it March Madness for no reason, okay? So you're making a lot of sense, and anything can happen. So I don't put it past you that this is a potential upset. It absolutely can be. You make a lot of good points. I love Drew Pember. He's an incredible player. Just for me, having a veteran point guard in Tiger Campbell.
I get it. Yeah.
You have somebody who also is a veteran who could match up with Drew Pember. And if I'm going to take Jaquez over Pember, or Jaquez versus Pember, I'm going to take Jaquez. And I think that the discipline and poise that Nick Cronin instills in this UCLA team, we just saw them play Arizona really, really tough shorthanded. Mm-hmm. It's hard for me to see them, this team upset. Yeah. I can see like an Xavier against Asheville here, or a team that's a little more shaky. UCLA is just so friggin' tough and poised and disciplined. It's tough. But that said, Mike, you do make a ton of sense.
But Mike, you're right. The issue with me is Campbell. Because remember, Michigan State
he's so good, and he's playing his best basketball right now too.
Yeah, he's super efficient from three. He makes his free throws. Michigan State had Denzel Valentine bringing the ball up. It's a different team. This was a little bit different. I get it. I totally get it. Let's get back here. Finish off the bracket for us. Take us through to the Elite Eight. Who do you have here going through in the West?
Okay, so I actually have a little upset brewing here in the second round. I actually have Arkansas over Kansas. Which I think those individual defenders can give Grady Dick and Jalen Wilson a little bit of trouble. And I think Nick Smith is the difference in there. Because he actually makes this Arkansas team, who is absolutely terrible shooting the three, a little bit competent from the three-point line.
Critical.
And we've seen Musselman, his defensive schemes, give a lot of different teams problems in historical tournaments. I think that's the case here again. Kansas is a little on shaky terms. They're a little banged up. Bill Self is just coming out of the hospital, so who knows how much contact he's had with the team. There's a little bit of flux there. I have Arkansas upsetting Kansas in the second round, moving on to the Sweet 16. I also have St. Mary's, the more disciplined and poised team, upset. Betting wise, this is going to be an upset. Actually, I don't know, but I have St. Mary's beating UConn in the second round. Okay. I think UConn has too inconsistent. I'd much rather take a very consistent team there. I think they can handle the size of Connecticut. So I have St. Mary's moving on to the Sweet 16. I have the Zags beating TCU for the same reasons I was bearish on TCU before. And I have UCLA beating Northwestern in the second round. And then moving on to the Sweet 16, I have St. Mary's beating Arkansas.
Wow.
And I have, this is one where I'm still trying to decide and going back and forth. But right now, I think the Jalen Clark injury is just a little too much of a blow defensively. And I think the Zags have enough offensive firepower to get past UCLA in the Sweet 16 to move on to the Elite Eight. So I have a rematch of the WCC championship.
This is great. Oh, this would be
into
great.
The Elite Eight. It would be amazing.
Oh, it would be amazing. So who do you got going? I'm going to guess Gonzaga.
After watching the WCC final where I was on St. Mary's, which was obviously the wrong side, I don't think I can make that mistake again. And I have the Zags moving on to the Final Four to get revenge from getting knocked out earlier last season.
Excellent stuff here, man. Oh my goodness. One bracket to go. We got some comments here. Want to get your reaction. Some comments coming in the chat, of course. We got our guy here, Stuart. He's like, maybe I shouldn't have Texas knocked out so quickly. Love the Texas on Texas battle as well. And Stuart took the under there in the Arkansas-Illinois game. Went on the under the Arkansas.
I like that play. There's going to be a lot of isolation, which in college basketball is not the same as the NBA. So I think there's going to be a lot more missed shots than made.
All right, let's get to the last bracket here, sir. Get you out of here. Get you some dinner. Thanks so much for joining us. Let's go to Purdue. There's the big man with the sledgehammer, Zach Edey. You got Purdue, Texas Southern, FDU to start, and then Memphis, Florida Atlantic. You got to give me a minute after you talk here. I get all hot and bothered. We talk about Florida Atlantic. Go ahead. Start us off those first two games.
That's an awesome graphic, by the way, of Zach Edey with the sledgehammer.
Yeah, the George, our guy, is amazing. Yes, yes.
But yeah, I mean, whoever comes out of that playing game, which I'm assuming is going to be Texas Southern, because I don't think FDU can just handle the size of Texas Southern. FDU is super tiny. I'll be rooting for them because they're a New Jersey team and they press a lot. They're a lot of fun, but Texas Southern's been there before, has a ton of size, has a couple high major transfers down. I think they get it done. But yeah, I mean, a 16 seed trying to handle the most dominant post player maybe ever in college basketball. Good luck with that. So Purdue's moving on to the second round there. And then here we go in the 8-9 matchup that I know that you get super, super excited about, because Florida Atlantic has been an absolute wagon for you betting wise this year. And man, Mike, I wish I got on that wagon as much as you did this year, because they are just an automatic money machine. I'm really disappointed with the committee. We're matching these two up because these two can absolutely make a ton of noise in this tournament from that 8-9 spot. I think both of them are severely underseeded. I know Memphis stumbled a lot in the middle of the season, so I guess you can justify the 8 seed, but talent-wise, this is a top 20, top 15 team. And Florida Atlantic, I think they should be maybe a 7 seed. But anyway, I digress there. This is probably the best first round matchup in the whole tournament. So if you're looking for games to watch, I would have this one circled because this one's going to be awesome. Starting with FAU, they've been incredible all year. They ran through Conference USA. They have a top 40 defensive efficiency and offensive efficiency metric per Ken Pom. They play a ton of guys, so they wear teams down. Their two best guards are John L. Davis and Elijah Martin, who are absolute studs. They defend the paint well. They're 11th nationally in two-point field goal percentage. And what Memphis wants to do is pressure the ball. They have super aggressive defense. But FAU has seen a lot of pressurized defense this year from UAB and handled it pretty damn well. So I don't think they'll be bothered by the Memphis defensive athleticism or pressure like a lot of teams in the tournament would. But for me, Mike, the difference in this matchup is that Memphis has the best point guard in the country in Kendrick Davis. He is poised to make a lot of noise here in the tournament. The guy is an absolute baller. And you know the narrative of guards in March. Mm-hmm. Kendrick Davis is going to be the best point guard on the floor. I think this is going to be a back and forth game. So with Kendrick Davis on Memphis, I got to lean that way. Mm-hmm. And I also think that there's nobody on FAU that can handle the versatility of DeAndre Williams. I've seen FAU play a lot of times, and just looking up and down their roster and how they defend, I don't think they have anybody that can really handle his versatility and his size. Memphis has a ton of athletes they can throw at you, and I think they can win the rebounding battle here. They have a better point guard, and I think they edge him out in a very close game. So I have Memphis moving on.
Yeah, I think I think it's fair. Kendrick Davis, like I said, Tiger Campbell, you have those great point guards. It's very tough. He certainly can 30 points. He can take the game over. My counter is going to be this. I heard about this Florida Atlantic team, and you saw the way that betting line went up there in that conference tournament final against UAB. People, here comes Jelly Walker, 30 points, 35 points. They can't handle him. They handle him. They got out and run. I think
very good point.
I think they can turn him over. I think teams like Memphis, they're going to get pressed. Yes, you have Kendrick Davis, but they could get some other turnovers. The big man inside for Florida Atlantic cannot get in foul trouble, because the reason the Middle Tennessee State came back is they pounded them inside. It is a concern. It is not a perfect matchup. I agree with you. I would not like it, but I remember back, I'm old enough to go back to 2010 when I loved Cornell, but I didn't like their draw, and I shied away from going with Cornell against Temple and then Wisconsin, and I said, these teams do what Cornell does, but better. No way. It didn't happen. So I'm sticking to my guns. I get it. And if I wasn't so in love with Florida Atlantic and had such a tremendous year backing them, maybe I would not be on them here, but I get it. My question to you, a little spoiler alert. If you have Memphis, do you think Memphis is moving on next round?
Well, here's the thing with this, Mike. I think that this matchup, this 8-9 matchup, is going to be so close, and whoever wins this matchup, I think is going to have an easier time beating Purdue in the next round.
I said it.
Whether it's Memphis or whether it's FAU, I think whoever comes out of there is going to have an easier time in the second round against Purdue than this really, really intriguing, fun matchup in the first round.
Completely agree.
But for me, it's Memphis. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's fair. No, but we are in alignment. This is a much watch game. Get your popcorn ready. And the winner of this game, I agree. If I'm wrong, Florida Atlantic loses. I think Memphis is winning next round. I'll be on them, backing them for sure. Two interesting games here. Top part of the region, but the bottom part of that section. Number 5 Duke, number 12 Oral Roberts.
Yeah, so this is a fun one. So Duke comes in as pretty much the hottest team in the country after running through the ACC tournament. I saw them live. They looked really good. But I think people have a little bit of recency bias on this Duke team, and they forget that they struggled majority of the year, especially in ball screen defense and in the backcourt. And this is a really tough draw for this young Duke team and this young Duke coach. It's a really tough prep for a young team to go against this veteran Oral Roberts team. And this Duke team is a little bit weird under John Shire this year, where we usually see a really aggressive, hyper-aggressive pressure defense from Duke. But this year they are very conservative. They don't force a lot of turnovers. They kind of sit back and wait. And I don't know if that's a great game plan against this Oral Roberts team, who is really good at executing in the half court. Mm-hmm. They are going to pick and roll you to death with Max Asmus and all the shooters he's surrounded with, veteran shooters who have been into the NCAA tournament before. Their offense actually reminds me a lot of Miami's, where Duke's gotten torched a couple times against Miami's offense this year. And the one spot where Duke does have a pretty big advantage is with the, Swiss Army knife, Kyle Filipowski inside, where they could attack Oral Roberts on the offensive glass, similarly like they did to Miami in the ACC tournament. I think Oral Roberts needs a big game out of Arkansas transfer Vanover, and they need to keep Duke off the glass. And if they do, and Duke makes this more of a half-court game, I think Oral Roberts has a great chance of out-executing Duke on the offensive end. And give me Max Asmus against Jeremy Roach every single time, and I think Oral Roberts can pull it off.
Yeah, we're in lockstep there. Duke, I talked about this earlier in the show. I bring it up again. It's not an anti-Duke thing. I think what Shire's done has been tremendous. They're definitely playing well. But the fact is they only beat one tournament team in this last run, and it was NC State, who's got one quad one win. Then they beat Miami, all of that stuff. I think it is a bad matchup, and it's only 5.5, so you can tell that the odds makers think it's going to be close as well. Right below that, Tennessee, Louisiana.
Yeah, so actually, Mike, this one jumped out at me right when I first saw the bracket come out, and I saw some people thinking, I see a lot of people bad talking Tennessee because of their point guard being injured and them not having Zakai Ziegler. Even without their point guard here, this is an absolutely brutal matchup for Louisiana, and I hopped right on Tennessee -10. I think they absolutely smoked this Louisiana team, where Louisiana wants to get out in transition. And the only source of offense they really have is they don't really shoot threes, is they want to get the ball inside to their best player, Jordan Brown, in the post. And Tennessee does not let anything in the paint. They don't allow anything in transition. And they don't allow they're one of the best 2-point field goal percentage defenses in the entire country, even without Zakai Ziegler. That's just a recipe of disaster. You need to be able to move the ball and shoot threes over this Tennessee defense. Louisiana really can't do that. I think Jordan Brown gets shut down. I think Tennessee rolls here.
Yep. Let's go to the bottom part of the bracket here. Kentucky, Providence. I saw a video today, Mike. As soon as they saw that it was Bryce Hopkins, they started mumbling to themselves there. Kentucky, they know he's going to be ready. So we have Kentucky, Providence, Kansas State, Montana State. Who do you got in both of those?
Yeah, so this Kentucky one, I keep going back and forth, and maybe you can help me out on this one with your thoughts. I don't really have a good feel for this one. Ed Cooley does really well in tournament settings recently. He has really, really impressive prep for any type of tournament setting. He's one of the better coaches to prep for this Kentucky team. But honestly, watching this Providence team recently in the end of the season in the Big East tournament, something does seem a little off. And you also have the Georgetown rumors swirling around Ed Cooley. I don't know how much of an effect that has on the team. Providence doesn't really – the way to beat Kentucky is you need to space Kentucky out and get Oscar away from the rim, put him in ball screens, exactly what Alabama did when they absolutely crushed Kentucky, where Calipari couldn't even keep Oscar on the floor. He had to get him out. Providence isn't going to do that. They run this really tight, compact flex offense where Bryce Hopkins and Ed Croswell are kind of jamming the paint a little bit, and they run the flex screens. They rely a lot on offensive rebounds, which Kentucky has the best rebounder of the last 20 years probably in Oscar Tshiebwe. So I don't know if they have a lot of advantages in this one. Kentucky is getting healthier. Cason Wallace is playing, he's pretty inconsistent as a freshman, but he's playing better basketball. They are getting CJ Frederick back. It sounds like they're getting Severe Wheeler back a little bit, a little healthier. And I think this is a good matchup for Oscar Tshiebwe. Jacob Toppin's been playing better lately. So I am going to take Kentucky to move on, but I am not super confident on the pick. What do you think, Mike? Curious.
Yeah. I want to know who's going to play in this game. If I can find out who's going to play, and if Kentucky really has all those guys, I would go with Kentucky. But I do think Hopkins gives a big game here. Cooley is good in these situations. They're going to have to rebound because Kentucky was first in the SEC in offensive, defensive rebounding. So both teams are being inconsistent. Both teams are showing a little bit wear and tear. I do think Locke and Carter, those guys can get hot from three-point range. So it may be a live betting one for me because I may want to see how they come out, who's playing, whether they're healthy. I mean, Wallace came back, but he was 3 of 10 from the field. But Toppin played really well. Frederick's got to be able to knock some shots down. I do think they'll contain Tshiebwe inside because Providence can hit the offensive boards, the defensive boards where they're weak. It depends. I'm going to wait on this one. I want to see who's healthy. I want to see who's playing, and it could be a live game situation for me. I think it's tough. Right now, I am leaning Providence just because of the injuries, but I can go either way on that one. Talk to me about Kansas State, Montana State.
Yeah, so what a job we have here in Kansas State, who's been absolute. Jerome Tang has done a great job this year at Kansas State and exceeding expectations, bringing that Baylor-esque no middle defense, high tempo type of play style to Kansas State, and they've been great. They earned themselves a 3 seed when a lot of people didn't think they would make the tournament before the year. But this Montana State team is pretty talented. They have a couple high major talent level guys in Raekwon Battle, who came over from Washington, and they got a big guy in Jabril Bello, who could give Kansas State a little bit of problems inside. And I think they can compete here. And the reason I think they can compete is that they have Big Sky Defensive Player of the Year, Darius Brown, at point guard, who can absolutely make life hell for Marquise Noel on the Kansas State side, bringing the ball up. He'll be, attached to the hip all game to Marquise Noel and make things extremely difficult for him all game. But ultimately, at the end, I think this Kansas State team has a massive speed advantage on Montana State. I don't think Montana State has seen a team that can get up and down the court like Kansas State has done all year. They have a excellent scorer and one of the best stories in all of college basketball in Keontae Johnson, coming over from Florida after having that near-death experience on the court. It's been awesome to see what he's done this year and how much of a successful season he's had. So I think Kansas State pulls away late, but Montana State could give them a little bit of problems, but I think it's the speed of Kansas State that ultimately gets it done here.
Yeah, I just don't think Montana State's built to come back if they get behind. I wrote this one up, and what I put in there is I expect an 8-point run by Kansas State midway through the second half that they can't recover from. They just really need to control the game. I saw in the conference tournament. They can make some shots. They're not great from three. I don't think they're going to be able to rebound inside. And I think Johnson can get his shots whenever he wants. That's the key. And Noel can get hot. But yes, I think they keep it close for a while, maybe like a first half line. 2 in the bottom.
That's an excellent point.
Yeah, 2 in the bottom, sir, and then we'll move on. I don't know. I like Michigan State here. I feel like they're somehow underrated. I get it that it's the Big Ten, but I don't think USC should be in Rutgers. So, I mean, I guess there's a bias for that as well. But talk to me, Michigan State, USC, 7-10.
Listen, Mike, I've said this a lot of times this year in my betting write-ups because I bet Michigan State a lot this year, but I think that they are the best team. I mean, it's tough with Purdue there, and Purdue is, take nothing away from Purdue. They're an outstanding team. Zach Edey is amazing. Matt Painter is a great coach, but I think that Michigan State at least has the best backcourt in all of the Big Ten all year.
Yes.
I love AJ Hoggart.
Yep.
I really like Tyson Walker. We talked about this before, guards in March. Tom Izzo has a little bit of a track record in March. I like Michigan State a lot here. The thing that I do want to point out that makes this matchup a little tricky is that we talked about this before, that the Big Ten show defensively, pretty much every team plays drop coverage on defense, which AJ Hoggard just absolutely tore up all year, where USC doesn't. USC, they either switch because they have a lot of lengthy wings, or they hard hedge, which can leave maybe like a Joey Hauser or Malik Hall open on the short roll or on the pop. So AJ Hoggard is going to have to adjust his game a little bit, which I think he can. But that's just something to keep in mind. Where I think that Joey Hauser and Malik Hall are the keys in this game, because on the defensive side of the ball, what USC wants to do, their offense is really a two-trick pony, right? It's number one, they want to try to get Drew Peterson at the high post. So you need somebody who can match up with him, because he's going to try to make plays from the middle of the lane there. And I think Malik Hall is probably the best defensive matchup there. So Tom Izzo is going to have to play Malik Hall a lot of minutes. Or you have Boogie Ellis, who has had a great year, but his shot selection's a little shaky. So you're going to have to try to force him into as many contested jump shots as you can, which I think Michigan State can. Where Michigan State has struggled a lot this year is their interior defense, where USC really doesn't have that big of a post presence. So I don't think they can take really advantage there. So if I'm looking at this matchup, I'd rather take the backcourt of Michigan State over a little bit of a chaotic shot selection issue that Boogie Ellis kind of has. I mean, Boogie Ellis can certainly get hot and kind of will USC to a win here, but I think Michigan State's the more disciplined team. I like their backcourt a little better, so I have Michigan State moving on.
Yeah, and the last one here, of course, Marquette and Vermont. You know, John Becker wants to make his team the Gonzaga of the East. Obviously, they're not that level, but they are very consistent, and they've had some good performances here in the opening round. They have not gotten over that first round hump here. What about them versus Marquette? Last game we got here in the first round.
Yeah, so this is actually a little bit of an interesting one, where I know a lot of people are writing Vermont off right from the start, but they could compete here. And I'm not all in on Marquette like a lot of people are. Where Marquette, there's two pretty big red flags that they show in their metrics, or even just watching them play, is that they're really bad on the glass, right? They're 319th defensive rebounding nationally, and they give up a ton of open threes. So if a team gets hot from three, you know, Marquette better watch out. I mean, the counter to that is they have one of the best point guards in the country in Tyler Kolek, who's been absolutely amazing and is an absolute stud, that guy, this year. Which has kind of made Marquette a wagon this year. But, you know, those two things, the rebounding concerns and giving up a ton of threes, we've seen in the past teams that have similar sort of red flags can get bounced early. And when you look at Vermont, they play at a really slow pace, and they move the ball really well, and they shoot a lot of threes at a really high percentage. So if Marquette isn't hitting their shots on offense, Vermont's making this a low possession game, and they're getting a lot of open threes and hitting them. Marquette could be in for a scare here. I don't think Vermont can pull it off, mostly because you look at guards in March, and Tyler Kolek, I don't think will allow that to happen, especially if the game gets close at the end. But I wouldn't write Vermont off completely here, because I think they have the ability to keep this game close.
Yeah, Mike, I was at that game there with St. John's. St. John's scalding hot from three. They had Marquette in a lot of trouble. The only problem is St. John's just inconsistent, came all the way back. But I agree. I think Vermont is live here. They were able to grab rebounds in that championship game against Xavier, because Xavier just got buried, started chucking from beyond the arc. That may not happen here. So I agree. Listen, let's wrap it up. Take me through your East region here. Tell me who your Elite Eight is.
Okay, so we talked about this briefly before, but and I know a lot of people have similar feelings here, but any team that can really pressure that Purdue backcourt and give them a lot of issues, we've seen them collapse so many times down the stretch in Big Ten play. Memphis, I've been kind of saying it on Twitter for the last few weeks that if they get a Memphis or an Arkansas second round matchup, goodbye Purdue. They get Memphis here in the second round. I have Memphis moving on to the Sweet 16. Where I think also Memphis has enough bodies to at least contain Zach Edey, but really the issue there for Purdue there is going to be the backcourt, and Kendrick Davis can absolutely torch that Purdue backcourt. Then I have Oral Roberts against Tennessee. I think that Tennessee's defensive discipline is just too much for that Oral Roberts team, right? Oral Roberts needs a little more of a shaky defense, and I think Tennessee has the defensive prowess. And I also like that a lot of people are off of them, so that I have a little bit of leverage of having Tennessee move pretty far without Zakai Ziegler. So I have Tennessee moving on to face Memphis in the Sweet 16. I have Kentucky beating Kansas State, where I think that Kansas State just won't have any answer to Oscar. So I have Kentucky moving to the Sweet 16. And I have Marquette squeaking by Michigan State in a close one to the Sweet 16. Then to move on to the Elite Eight, I have Kendrick Davis and Memphis beating Tennessee.
Wow.
Moving on to the Elite Eight. And I talked about the red flags for Marquette with their rebounding earlier, and I think Kentucky is the perfect matchup to exploit that. So I have Kentucky, Memphis in the Elite Eight in this region. And just to kind of preface here, Mike, I think the East, there's some craziness that's going to happen. I know my bracket right now looks a little crazy with an 8 and a 6 here.
I love it.
I'm still trying to move things around, but right now this is what I have, and I kind of like it a lot.
I do, because you have to have one of these. You can't just go with the ones, and you have to. It's a very logical bracket. I could see Marquette struggling. I could see all of those things. Kentucky, Calipari gets hot as the players come back. Who do you have in the Final Four from this bracket?
Yeah, so I have Kendrick Davis and DeAndre Williams getting past Calipari, his old coaching grounds, and Memphis as an 8 seed moving on to the Final Four.
You know what I love?
And Mike, to be before, I'm sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
This could easily be number 9 FAU.
Yes, that's it.
Absolutely. It easily could be them.
That's what it is. I like it because what you're saying to me is we grab our popcorn and the winner of that game's got a shot. And I really think they do. I am not just saying it to say it. I don't say things for shock value. I have watched this team. I love it. But for all those reasons, I think the Memphis game is the tough game. That's the one I'm going to watch for sure. And then maybe we'll get some money down there on Memphis if they end up moving forward. Folks, Mike Cutri gave you well over an hour and 15 minutes. I'm sorry, Mike. I can listen to you all night here. He will be on tomorrow with Walt Waddell on Mean Streets with Chris Meany, of course. I'll come back to you later in the afternoon. Get ready, folks. We have some great stuff for you. Mike is the king. He's been killing it here. One of the best in the business. It's a pleasure talking to you, Mike. Thanks so much for taking through all the brackets.
Wait, Mike, do you want me to go through my Final Four picks?
Oh, yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Give me the 4. Give me the 4 if you got time. I felt we went over the hour. Give me what you got.
No, it's perfectly okay. I'm like you. I can talk all night about this stuff. All right. So I have okay, hold on. Let's see. I have Arizona out of the South.
Yep.
I have Houston out of the Midwest.
Yep.
I have the Zags out of the West. And I have Memphis out of the East.
Okay. And so who's in the finals?
Right now, I have Arizona against Houston.
Wow.
In the finals. And I have Houston getting it done at home, cutting down the nets. I think they're the most complete team in the country. Marcus Sasser seems perfectly okay. He looks like he was just sitting out for precautionary reasons. And yeah, I think Houston, they've been my number 1 team for the whole entire year. And I will continue to bang that drum, and I think that they cut down the nets this year.
That would be magical, man. To have them at home would be absolutely unbelievable. I love it. It's unique. It's got some of the top seeds. It has the big upsets here. Memphis, Kentucky. I mean, where else are you going to get this besides Mike Cutri, folks? Thank you so much, Mike. It's a pleasure, man. Thanks for joining me here. I appreciate it. Can't wait for this to get started in full on Thursday.
Awesome, Mike. Thanks for having me on again, man.